My name is Brad Miller. I'm the Director of Admissions here at the Joseph Corbell School, and I want to thank you for coming. We have some people coming from out of state, particularly sunny San Diego, so thank you for braving the elements and making it all the way out here. This should be a good event. This is going to be your opportunity to ask questions, hear from some of our faculty members. Later on, you're going to hear from some of our staff members, some of our students, and some of our alumni. So thanks again for coming. And by all means, ask questions. This is your chance to really learn more about the program and see if this is a good fit for you. So unfortunately, our dean is unable to be here tonight. He was called out of town at the last minute. So I regret that he cannot be here, but he does have a welcome video on our website. I encourage you to check that out. And he normally is around a little bit more than tonight would indicate. So we're going to get started with our faculty panel. And I'll introduce them real quick, and then they're going to talk about the different degree programs that they work with. Starting off here is George DiMartino, the co-director of the Global Finance, Trade, and Economic Integration Program. You'll hear that referred to as GIFTY throughout the night. So the GIFTY program is the Global Finance, Trade, and Economic Integration Program. Claude Destray is the degree director of the International Human Rights Program. He will be here shortly. Tim Sisk is a professor in the International Studies Program. He's talking about that degree. Karen Flynn is the degree director of the International Security Program and the Conflict Resolution Program. And Sally Hamilton is the degree director of the International Development Program. And Thomas Rowe is the degree director of the International Administration Program. So I'll let each of them talk just briefly about their degrees.
Okay, I'm going to start off. Again, my name is George DiMartino, and I'm a co-director of the Global Finance, Trade, and Economic Integration degree. So this is our degree that most heavily focuses on politics, the intersection between politics and economics. I want to tell you a little bit about what the degree does, what we don't try to do, what you could expect were you to enter this degree, and if I have time, I can say something about some of the kinds of careers that our students pursue. This degree actually pursues essentially two broad kinds of training. One, we seek broad liberal arts training, theoretical training in the issues pertaining to political economy. The second area is much more skills focused. We also, while trying to work on preparing our students to really grapple with the broad theoretical debates in the area of political economy, we also very much want them to walk away from this institution with the very narrow skill set that they're going to need in order to compete for jobs in the world out there in the kinds of careers that they seek. And so, for instance, with respect to skills, we emphasize quantitative training as well as qualitative training. For example, econometrics. Now we require econometrics, and we get our students up to speed so that they can actually enter jobs on day one and actually be conversant in the kind of statistical work that many political economists do. But we also, and we do training in forecasting, project management, project assessment. These are courses that other degrees also rely on heavily. But we also do a good bit of qualitative skills training as well. We require a lot of writing out of our students. Our degree is not a degree in applied mathematics the way economics often is at the MA level. This is very much an interdisciplinary degree that is trying to prepare our students to go out there in the world and make sense of the most pressing political economy issues from an interdisciplinary perspective. Our view here is that providing students with a very narrow economic basis doesn't really do much for them when they actually go out in the world and try to actually operate in a world where they're going to have to be dealing with people from all different kinds of disciplines. Our core, we have a core in this program, and it's some of the things you'd expect to find were you doing a master's degree in economics, such as international trade and international finance, which explore the international trading systems and the international monetary relations. But beyond that, we also have courses that are explicitly interdisciplinary. So for example, we require international political economy, which explores the connections between politics and economics, the ways in which global changes in terms of world economic markets reflect upon and bear upon, influence political outcomes at the domestic level. So in the interactions between politics and economics. We have a course that's required in political economy of globalization. Much of the movement over the last 20 years in the global economy has been toward tighter economic integration. This has tremendous economic ramifications, but it also has very serious and important political ramifications. And so political economy of globalization gets our students to investigate those kinds of connections. I'll just say a word about the kinds of careers our students pursue. We are preparing our students to compete for jobs well in 5 broad areas. The public sector, I would say that probably the largest single group cohort of our students end up working for the federal government or government at other levels. The multilateral sector, we send students off to work at in all sorts of UN agencies, World Bank, IMF, Inter-American Development Bank, the Asian Development banks across the globe. So that's the second sector, the multilateral sector. Next is the private sector. Many of our students want to and do secure positions working in the corporate sector. Many of those are working for private, for-profit consulting firms. And indeed, many of our students are interested in economic development. A lot of that economic analysis work in the field of development is now being done by consulting firms. So many of our students leave here and go off into that sector. Many of our students go on to secure a PhD, either in economics or even more commonly in political science and international political economy. I will end there. There'll be plenty of time for question and answer.
Great, thanks George. Welcome everyone. My name is Tim Sisk and I'm standing in this evening for Professor Frank Blair. He's the head of the International Studies degree program here, but I'm a professor here in the program and teach one of the core classes. I teach the core class in comparative politics. And some of the things we've been looking at this quarter, of course, have been the Arab Spring transitions. In those terms, use the microphone. Thank you, Nicole. Be happy to. So other aspects that we look at are things like state failure and state capacity development around the world, governance more broadly construed, civil society. These are the kind of things that come up in that core class. Other classes I teach, to introduce myself a little bit, is a course on civil wars and international responses, which looks at the outbreak of internal conflict, interstate conflict, sometimes called armed violence as well, and the whole sort of regime of international responses that have emerged since the end of the Cold War, late '89, the peace keeping, prevention, peace-building agendas of the UN. So that's another course we have going on at the moment. Well, anyway, the International Studies degree is our largest degree. It's an interdisciplinary degree. It's one of the sort of flagship degrees that historically have been associated with this Association of Professional Schools in International Affairs. So what it does is it combines a kind of interdisciplinary core in which one basically gets to choose among comparative politics, international relations, international political economy, as George described, as well as political theory. And then with this interdisciplinary kind of core, you go on to design your own concentrations. Well, first you design what are called fields, and then concentration. So sort of just to walk one through the degree, first is the rationale for the degree. Now there's a big debate, and I'm sure everyone here faces this with the kind of student advising about whether graduate school is more about specialization and really gaining a skill set like in global trade, finance, and economic integration that sort of sets you up right for work in that field, versus kind of what's beyond the liberal arts degree. It's a more interdisciplinary core that allows you to sort of be good at a lot of different things and to have a broader training. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all on that question, but for some people I think specialization makes a lot of sense. But for other people, I think it makes a lot of sense to get this sort of broader international studies degree and just sort of see where life takes them in a way. So the sort of flagship international studies degree, it's an interdisciplinary degree. It's kind of theory-informed learning, one could describe it. And it allows one to put together a range of specializations. So the specializations come around in these 4 fields that are associated with the degree. The first one is international politics, and this would be sort of international organizations, would include diplomacy between states, would include things like, well, I was just coming in and listening to China as being named the #1 spy on United States corporations. And so this is the sort of stuff of international politics, countries and other countries, the international state system, international organizations, this international politics as it were. So maybe some of that Cold War theory stuff should come back around in some ways. The other field is comparative politics, as I sort of described before. And a lot of people who work in the comparative politics area are interested in development, as Sally will describe, but also in international human rights, as Claude will describe when he appears. And then one can also specialize in international political economy here. Maybe the difference between the 2 degrees, as you would think about looking at this menu of degrees, is that you can specialize in an area or you can really specialize in an area. And I think the gifty would be the really specialized. The international studies degree would allow you to kind of, for example, link together a focus on international political economy and one on development. So it's a kind of trading breadth for depth. The 4th area is political theory, and this is where we have a very strong faculty here at the Korbel School on everything from sort of ancient political theory through to sort of Enlightenment theory. Theories of human rights is a very strong area here for us, and as well, I think advanced theories in development from some of our faculty who've actually worked in these different development banks. So the last couple things about the international studies degrees, you get to choose a concentration, and this is like 3 or 4 grouped courses. And basically we have a set of concentrations, and this would be conflict resolution or security or human rights. But this is where it's a bit of a smorgasbord in terms of the classes. You can create your own concentrations, and that happens very often. Particularly if you're in a regional interest, then this is a way to develop a regional one. So the internship and thesis are also part of this degree, both of which are kind of optional. But the thing for some people for this degree, and I'll just conclude with this, is that they see it as a really good way to prepare themselves if they're interested in the long haul of a doctoral degree program. Then doing the international studies degree, combining that with the thesis, really getting a lot of good methodological training at that level, theory-informed knowledge, that's the degree that a lot of people choose for those purposes. So anyway, I look forward to the questions and answers as well.
Thanks, Tim. Can you hear me? Good. If you want to eradicate poverty globally, then international development is the degree for you. At Korbel, we emphasize not only economic development, although that is a pillar for international development, but also the importance and interrelatedness of economic development, environmentally sustainable economic development, human rights, and human development. So development is a very broad field. And our graduates are working across the board in the private sector, the public sector, and the NGO sector to eradicate economic poverty, to eliminate preventable diseases, to help in humanitarian emergencies, to make sure that everything that is done in the name of development is done in a way that's environmentally sustainable. It's a large order. If you want to take on those challenges, then development is the degree for you. The strengths of the program at Korbel, in addition to the fact that we poach on the gifty degree, we poach on the basic international studies degree, we poach on conflict resolution, we poach on international administration, we're truly an interdisciplinary program in every way because of the breadth of the field of development itself. So we train people to be very flexible in development. It's not at all unusual for a person working out in the field to be told, let's say on Monday, okay, next week you're going to be the gender expert, let's say, on a particular program, and the young professional says, yeah, who, me? What do I know about gender? And that person will be told, well, by next week you better know a whole lot. So what we do is we provide the tools for you to be able to be a lifelong learner to meet those challenges of development, as well as a solid theoretical foundation. That is, we talk about the ideas that influence development agendas and understandings of development. We talk about the institutional realities of trying to get that work done, that is the politics of development, to attack those very severe inequalities in access to resources that people have around the world. So we do ideas, we do institutions. Am I doing that?
No.
Yikes. Okay. Issues, ideas, institutions, policy paradigms, and outcomes. So you can be a policy professional, you can be a get your boots dirty field worker, you can be an administrator. Probably you will be all three at some point in your career in development, or at least you'll be conversing with people who do all three of those areas. So it's a broad field. We give you the knowledge and the flexibility to attack that field. We also prepare you with the most in-demand skills for the field at the moment and for the future. These include things like communications, humanitarian assistance preparation, health preparation. We have a number of working practitioners in the field of development who help us present our curriculum, our practical skill-based side of our curriculum. And that's very important for us. And I also want to tell you that our students have been enormously competitive. They've not only achieved rapid success and advancement in their fields, but many of them have also decided that they want to pursue PhDs, often after a year or two in the field. And so we prepare you for both. We're not a training program per se. We give you practical skills, we also emphasize ideas, and we also emphasize networking to obtain that first important job, to begin networking for life, which in development's a very dynamic field. And that means that once you get started and you become known, you'll be rated by other organizations who want you to work for them. It's a very dynamic employment sector. We think networking is a very important part of that. And also our wonderful career services office, who you will hear from later, does a great job of competitiveness prepared. Can you say that? Preparing you in a competitive way to enter and succeed in that field. Thanks a lot.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Flynn, and I'm down to talk about two separate programs that I've been directing until now. One is international security. The other is conflict resolution. They are intimately related, although we define them here as separate professional degree programs. I want to say a few words about each of them, and I'll look at security first, because that's the one about conflict. Then, of course, to resolve it, we've got to look at the other program on conflict resolution. Our security program here has long and very deep roots. Two of our most famous graduates in the history of the Korbel School had that kind of training, the first one being Condoleezza Rice, the former U.S. Secretary of State, and the second being George Casey, the General Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army, who just left his post in April of 2011 and was the first commander in Iraq in 2003. So we've got deep roots in the security issues here that have taken us to the highest echelons in Washington. Within our program here, we have a recent development I'm delighted to announce, in that we've just hired a chair, a top professor, Deborah Avant, who's a specialist in private contracting in the Army and the other military branches, and she's just started in September, and she is running the C Center for International Security and Diplomacy. The C Center is literally the building to our south, the one that's connected. And we are doing more hiring in the security field right as I'm speaking now. We are the third largest program here. We currently have some 80 students who are pursuing their master's degree in security. We have 6 required courses. They include, first of all, 2 courses in security and defense analysis methodology. Why 2, and why is that the first I mentioned? Because all the analyses show of private and public agencies that hire people in the security field insist, and I'll just quote you from this report, I just got it a few days ago, the top 6 skills that people look for in hiring someone out of the security field are: number 1, familiarity with analytic methodologies; number 2, written communication; number 3, research methods; number 4, teamwork; number 5, oral communication; and number 6, databases. In other words, you may not have to know about the history of the conflict in Iraq, but you better know the methods about how to analyze it, and hence we have 2 courses in SecDef methods. Then beyond that, a course in American foreign policy, 1 in American defense policy, another one in major issues in international security, and a last one in classics in security and strategy. Beyond that, the program is for you to craft. You might choose a regional expertise, focusing, say, in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, Latin America. You might choose a focus in functional areas, different forms of political violence, or intelligence. Those would be 3 of our sub-areas in which we have sufficient capacity for training. And all of these programs require an internship. Many of our internships are paid. NORTHCOM, the U.S. Northern Command Center, is just down the street in Colorado Springs. A number of our students have worked there. And of course, our success rate in placing people in the security field in these days, even though it's a decade post 9/11, this is a very alive and growing field, and it's going to be with us for a very long time. On the second program now, the Master of Arts in Conflict Resolution, solving the problems that security can't get to. In other words, when violence doesn't work, turn to nonviolence. It should be the reverse, but often it's start with the violence first. The Conflict Resolution Institute here is about 12 years old. The field of study, conflict resolution, is relatively new. Even though we've had conflict on the planet since we had people on the planet, conflict resolution only formalized maybe 30, 40 years ago, and it really was ensconced in the United States Institute of Peace with their quote, this was founded in 1984, that such an institution would be the most efficient and immediate means for the nation to enlarge its capacity to promote the peaceful resolution of international conflict. They now have their own building. It's not as big as the Pentagon, but it's on the mall. It's prominent, it's important. All right, what do we do in this field of conflict resolution? We combine scholarship with vocational training, theory and practice. Conflict resolution is something you can't just learn in your head, you have to get out there and actually do it. So it's a 50-50 split. And we see that conflict that arises, whether it's between individuals, between organizations, between communities, between countries, is basically governed by the same set of dynamics. So we have a curriculum here that trains our people to resolve conflict in political arenas, whether through international diplomacy or looking at national election debates. You know, DU is going to have the first presidential debate on this campus next October 3rd. I was sad to hear it because I wish it were called a presidential candidate dialogue, where they'd be looking to see what would be the best for the nation rather than arguing about why you should vote for me. The program here, what can you do with this subject area of conflict resolution that is meant to train you on a set of techniques? We focus on negotiation training, mediation training, facilitation training. We look at difficult people, difficult conflicts. The kind of careers that people go into in this field range from being a mediator, a manager, a planner, a counselor, a trainer. We ask people also to get some training in communication theories and to go over to the business school in organization and leadership dynamics. And then we finish off with a course on evaluation and assessment, conflict assessment, and assessing the impact of conflict resolution techniques. We have a series of specialized courses: restorative justice, intractable conflict, creating agreement, public forum facilitation, resolving public issues, environmental dispute resolution. Our program requires not only an internship, where you work and observe conflict resolution and practice, but something we call a practicum. By the time our students leave here, they will have had at least 100 hours in official mediation work, where they're resolving real cases, not role-playing. The state of Colorado requires 40 hours of mediation training before you can actually do this, to solve small issues, claims courts, from the barking dogs, to the screaming neighbors, to landlord-tenant disputes, and family disputes, divorce issues, family custody. So we look at both domestic and international issues, and so our students leave here with a bagload of theory, with a lot of practical applications, and real experience, so you can actually go directly into that workforce. Our interns work around the world. They've worked in at least 8 different countries, around the country, and in Colorado. Our most famous graduate, in fact, our first graduate, got a job at the White House, working drug policy, and now is with the U.S. Foreign Service. We've also placed people in the Multilateral Institute for Diplomacy in Washington, and interestingly, in conflict resolution, we've placed 3 people in Homeland Security, because the issue in Homeland Security is how do we resolve and prevent conflict. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Tom Rowe. I'm the director of the International Administration degree. For those of you especially interested in trying to make organizations that are involved in development or in conflict resolution or in security or in human rights, for those of you interested in making those organizations operate more effectively, the International Administration degree might be the degree you would choose. Essentially, what the International it's a very flexible, very applied and practical degree, and a very attractive degree to employers. Essentially, the degree attempts to have you get a basic grounding in international and comparative politics. Then it tries to give you knowledge of and experience with management in both the nonprofit sector, international nonprofit sector on the one hand, and in public agencies on the other hand. And also, for those of you with a special interest, the degree is flexible enough to allow you to take coursework in the Daniels College of Business to get a private sector component to your training. Anyhow, the management training is a core part of the program, just as the comparative and international politics are a core part of the program. Then we expect you to develop an issue specialization: human rights, security, development, health, an area where you would expect to be active in whatever organizations that you're involved in administering. And then the program has the normal form language requirement. It has the the expectation that you will have an internship, that you will get some experience through the Peace Corps or in government agencies or the like as part of your training. So it's a very practical, a very policy-oriented kind of degree that it is attractive to employers. So let's turn it over. Oh yes, you need the microphone. Claude.
Thank you. My name is Claude Distray. I apologize for being late. I'm going crazy. I'm leaving tomorrow for Washington, D.C. to talk to the DU Alumni Association about human trafficking and do a long presentation at Johns Hopkins University, our competitor at SICE, in fact, the Protection Project. So while we compete, we also cooperate with each other on a regular basis. I'd like to welcome all of you here. I wear 3 hats here. I'm the director of the International Human Rights Degree Program. I also direct the Center on Rights Development and the Human Trafficking Clinic. I'll talk a little bit about both of those very briefly. There are approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, around 77 to 80 students who are doing their master's degree in international human rights. And we have, like the others, a core program of dealing with theory, including an introduction to human rights as well as some law classes. And then if you were to look at the handout, you would notice that what we do have is a very large number of sort of concentrations so that you can do gender and human rights or international administration law and human rights or development and human rights. So we work closely with the other degree programs. Some students are doing, as well as there's a large number of human rights students who are doing humanitarian assistance, certificate program, the global health program, and although it's not a certificate program, working with the human trafficking clinic. There are basically, I think, 2 tracks. The first track is probably the smaller number of students, and those are those who are interested in going on to do doctoral work, PhDs, and usually are sort of interested in theory and moving in that direction. The vast majority of the master's students here are interested in working for the IOs and NGOs in the private sector, faith-based organizations, and to go out and actually work in the field. It's one of the things I've enjoyed about work both with my colleagues as well as the students here is one of the things I've noticed, not to belittle at all what we refer to as the Beltway schools and schools like Tufts, is that my sense is that the students here are interested in really getting dirt under their fingernails, as it were, getting out in the field, and that's something that we encourage, and we hope that we do a good job in beginning to prepare you. We can't obviously give you all the classes you need, but lay a foundation for you to be able to do the work, the real work, in helping people out in the field. The Center on Rights Development is one of the oldest centers here. What makes it unique, it's an academic center, but it has been run and it continues to be run completely by the students here, by master's students. So the associate director is of the clinic, works with me as a master's student, and so is the rest of the staff. They put on a symposium each year. This year we are focusing on issues of water and food security, which of course interacts and interconnects, if you wish, with all the degree programs that are here. And it's in its, I think, 17th or 18th year. The Human Trafficking Clinic is the only 2-year graduate level training program on forced labor, human trafficking, modern slavery, and international labor migration issues in the United States. I'm sort of aware that there might be a master's degree someplace in England on human trafficking, but I think we're it. So if that's in a very intensive 2-year training program. Again, it's neither a certificate program or a degree, but I can guarantee you, if you were to talk to the associates who are in that program, it's highly competitive to get into. They would tell you it's the equivalent of being in a certificate program with the kind of work that is demanded. We are going to be launching the very first journal in the world devoted to human trafficking and forced labor at the end of this academic year. That's always, the caveat is always, if all goes well, should always be put in parentheses when you're trying to launch anything that is new. I really think that's the long and short of it. We very much encourages the human rights students here is to find, in fact, if you wish, a subset or sub-expertise to focus in on global health or on security issues, national security, what I think of as human security issues, or development, and those kinds of things. So I think that's really it.
Well, thank you to our faculty for discussing your programs. We're going to open up to questions here in a little bit, but I have two things I want to point out. First of all, if you look to that wall, you'll see a list of papers. Those are what we call fact sheets about each degree. So before you leave here, if you're interested in more of the specifics of what courses you would be taking in a degree, do reference those sheets and take one with you. Also, a common question is, you have so many great degree programs, I don't know what I want. You're admitted to the school, not to the degree program, so you can actually change degree programs post-matriculation. So you could come in international studies and take a global finance, trade, and economic integration course and say, this is what I really like, and you could actually switch your program over to that. Just don't do it too late in your career, or you might run into an extended career. So we do ask that you make that decision before your second quarter. So we're going to open it up to questions that you all might have of these individuals.
Let me say, I will have to disappear. I teach a class at 6 o'clock on international humanitarian law of armed conflict upstairs. So as much as I love being with you, I have an obligation on the 3rd floor.
Any questions? Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to take any classes on GIS? I know that's pretty big. It's emerging in the field of development.
I'm gonna repeat that question just so everyone hears that. But is there any opportunity to take courses on GIS?
Yes.
And the answer was yes.
In the geography department?
No, yes, in the geography department, and we will actually be offering courses in GIS this year at Cornell.
Great, thank you.
That can't be the only question. All right.
Okay, so I had a question. So there are various schools for international relations and international studies. So what is it that makes the faculty at Corbell really unique and really stand out?
Great question. So with all the schools of international relations, what makes our faculty spectacular? I'm going to let you guys answer that.
You're looking at it. What makes us spectacular? It's obvious.
I don't know. I can't.
Technologically advanced.
We know how to use microphones. I can't say whether this makes us spectacular. I think one of the things that's unique about Corbell is that we have a faculty, I won't say a faculty of iconoclasts, but we have a faculty that is prepared to examine critically the mainstream traditions in their respective fields. So for instance, in political economy, if you compare what we do here, and I would, if you know, or in any field you happen to be interested in, but the one I know best is political economy. If you compare our syllabi here with what is done at our competitor schools, in the area of economics, you would find in most of our competitor schools really are running their political economy in their School of International Studies as if it were just an MA degree in economics, and so it's very applied micro, macro, heavily mathematized. We here do teach that in every course that we do in international trade, international finance. In fact, we will cover a lot of the same ground because our students need to be conversant in it if they're going to participate knowledgeably with economists in the room on policy. But we go then way beyond that. Virtually every syllabus in our program is interdisciplinary. My course in trade probably has more political scientists on the syllabus than it has economists. Why? Because political economists have had more interesting, or many more interesting things to say about many of the most pressing issues in political economy these days than have economists. We don't think that you can approach social problems, economic problems, like let's say development, by remaining in any one particular silo. And so we expect, and I think this is true of most of my colleagues here, that a syllabus, no matter what our field of training, will nevertheless draw widely on other traditions to the degree that those other traditions help to complement the core knowledge in the course that you're taking. We have, and I'll end on this point and hand off the microphone, but we have a willingness here to challenge orthodoxies. Not all from the left, not all from the right. We don't all agree on anything across the faculty other than that the world is too important and theory is too important to take any theory as gospel. And so we critique, we critique, we critique. We hope to leave our students with the capacity to do that critique as they go off into the world.
No, I'm happy to address that as well. George is a former associate dean of the school, and I'm as well. And so we've both been very much involved with designing our curriculum here, really from a very comprehensive point of view. And I think the thing that's most important across the Korbel School curriculum is a real concern with ethical issues, including the sort of a strong historical focus on human rights, but the ethics of poverty and poverty reduction, the ethics of humanitarian intervention, which is something that Karen has looked at. So this sort of focus on the ethical dimension of international relations is really, I think, what distinguishes our curriculum as a whole, which is, the experience that many students will walk away with. And the other, I think, is the kind of person and student body that we draw here, because often with our strong degrees in development and human rights, we draw a certain type of peer for students, for graduate students. And my experience is that, these very high proportion of returned Peace Corps volunteers, very high proportion of people who've worked in internships in international organizations, who've worked in development settings. And so, this is, I think, what distinguishes us as well. Just on a personal note, I was in Washington, D.C. for, 18 years or so altogether. And, I actually think that having a perspective on international affairs that comes sort of outside of Washington, D.C. is actually an advantage. So I would say that's one other aspect of the Korbel School. Anybody else? Karen, you want to take that one?
As a third line, I was also an associate dean here for a dozen years. And I'm going to add my perspective on this. I agree with, the criticality approach that we take here, the ethicalness, and there's something else about being in the interior, being outside of that Boston-Washington corridor where it's kind of day-to-day, moment-to-moment, what is going on in the policy world. We have a reputation as a faculty here and our students who have graduated from the program where we have the ability to take the long look, to take the step back, to see the big picture, to see all of the interrelationships, to look at how theory and policy link, not just policy by itself. And then, of course, shall I add the weather? It's sunny out here, and we're sunny people, and you are sunny people.
Since all of the associate deans are, I also was associate dean for about, and the dean, I was associate dean for about 5 years and dean for about 10. But I think there is besides all of those elements, there's also a bit more of even though the program is much larger than it was in the past, there's also, I think, a continuing degree of intimacy between the faculty and students that enriches the program, that gives it a quality that you might not find at all of the other APSIA schools.
The sunniness.
I want to promise you that I will never be an associate dean or a dean. It will never happen. I want to second, I agree with everything that's been said, but I'll tell you what really, another thing that will make this not only an efficient use of your time, not only will you learn a great deal, not only will you begin a new life with what you learn here, but one from the faculty, but this lady sitting over here, Susan Rivera, you're going to meet a number of wonderful staff people. Susan's the one I can see at the moment, and she is the one that students mention to me all the time as having made their desires come true here. Because we have a great faculty, and we have a great student body, as everyone else has said. But what really makes everything accessible to students is the wonderful staff we have who make sure that you get what you want. They work tirelessly on your benefit, on your behalf and for your benefit. And if I had to say what makes the difference, I'd say that's a big part of it.
I'll add just one other thing, just in case you think that because we're out of the Beltway, we're out of touch. You notice that a number of people up here, if you were to talk to us, came from Washington, D.C. Purposely to teach here for a number of different reasons, and we keep very close ties to those institutions in Washington, D.C. and other places of the world. All of us at this table certainly do that. And in addition to the programs here, we've had for a long time our Washington, D.C. program that you can participate in, taking time to go there. And as well as a couple of years ago, I began what I called the Geneva program on behalf of, quite frankly, my small cluster of people in the Human Trafficking Clinic for Associates. And then Rayanne and her office I was delighted to be relieved of the enormous burden of also trying to run an internship program, and it's in its nascent stages, but we're in the process of developing, I think, a world-class program in Geneva to place students in internships and long-term internships and a teaching program in Geneva. So just because we're in Denver, it doesn't mean that we're out of touch with New York or Washington, D.C. or Geneva or Vienna or a number of other places all over the world. We have a great China center, and Professor Zhao there has got very strong ties to those institutions all over China. The Xie Center, the C Center, I guess it's easier to say around here, is very much involved in issues of dealing with Asian diplomacy and politics and international relations. So don't be fooled somehow that Denver, because you're in Denver, you're not in touch. We are very much in touch, and the faculty work very hard to keep in touch with the institutions, both in the United States and internationally.
There's time for one more question.
You mentioned the econometrics class that's introducing the requirements for the degree. What about trade and finance classes? Are there any more qualitative requirements?
I'm going to repeat that question real quick. The question was, are the trade and finance classes more quantitative or more qualitative?
I can answer that precisely because I'm an economist. It's 60-40. In both of those courses, we spend 6 weeks on qualitative analysis and 4 weeks on quantitative analysis, and I think that's just about right. Because really, the issues that are the policy issues that come up can't just be handled through quantitative analysis. You also have to have historical context, political context, ethical context, and the like. So it's 60-40 exactly.
To add on that, a common question we have is, do you require micro or macro prior to admission? We do not. We highly recommend it, but we do not require it. You will be taking some stats courses. If you don't have an econ background and you want to go into global finance, that's fine. There's going to be a refresher course for that. So I think we are ready to move on. Thank you to our faculty.
Well, there was one more.
There was one more question.
Do you offer refresher math? Because for some of us, it's been a while.
Refresher math.
Just take stats one.
We actually.
Yeah, I'm serious.
There is a course, there's one course in sort of quantitative methods in international relations for the non-mathematically inclined, let's put it that way. So it's
just been 6 years. It's a lot of time.
yeah, so I would think it would be via the statistics offerings, right?
Yeah, we have a number of ways to progress through the statistics training for those students who either want it or need it. One of the avenues is precisely intended for students who either didn't do much math in the past or they did it so long ago that really they can't count on their recollection. And that's the Stats 1, Stats 2 sequence, and it's intended explicitly for people in that category. On the other hand, students who come to us with a much stronger background or a more recent background in statistics or mathematics can actually go through an accelerated program, and everyone ends up in the same place. So we've actually structured it so that students can customize according to their degree of comfort and familiarity.
One more question. I saw a hand. Go ahead.
As a student who's fairly new to international studies and political science studies, is there any particular base knowledge that you would like to see students coming into Korbel have?
So the question was, for someone with a non-IR background, is there a base knowledge that you would like students to have? Tim's got this.
Well, yeah, I can speak to that. Certainly, a lot of those who enroll, I teach one of the core classes here, and the core class that I teach, and as well as the others, are designed precisely with no prior expectation coming into a master's degree that you've had a disciplinary training, people with psychology backgrounds, sociology, literature, English language instruction, all kinds of things. So the courses are designed then to provide that sort of core training in the discipline. That's true of most graduate programs, is that they feed in from maybe someone with a liberal arts background, or someone with even had one more recently with a kind of neuroscience undergraduate training, but was interested in international development actually. So it's we have that. I always say that for the first paper in the first class, your graduate career is not going to rise and fall on that first paper. So it's the kind of thing where we really work with people who may have a different disciplinary background. And the faculty itself is very interdisciplinary, so it's not as if any one of these degrees is necessarily heavy in the political sciencey stuff, although let's face it, it's an international studies degree. It's that with economics are going to be the sort of two core pillars of any international degree program.
As an example, you can follow, if you had as weird a background as I do, and you can still make it here. I took no courses in political science or economics or any of those kinds of issues. My background, I went to Harvard Divinity School, went to law school, I was and worked at at the Department of Justice before coming here. I'm also happen to be the Buddhist chaplain at DU, so it's you can come with a strange background that doesn't seem to be related and do very well and apply those. And I'm also as excited about people who come in with very different backgrounds and then take what they have and use that as a lens by which they are learning new things. I also encourage, although any institution has what we call silos, but that is to try to break down the silos as much as possible so that you work hard not to just take a class or a course here as a separate entity unrelated to everything else, is that we try to encourage you to think about, the courses that you took should be, that keep on being reflected in the courses that you are taking, as well as your own, what you bring. You bring something to us. It's not just us bringing something to you into the classroom, but you bring a lot to us. And and having that kind of richness and diversity is, really adds very nicely, I think, to the mix.
But I see your students showing up for class.
They're okay.
I know that there's another question. You will get an answer to the question, but we're going to have to move on from the faculty panel now. So thank you.
Okay.
We'll make sure to get an answer to your question.